Have you ever wondered what happens behind the cameras when a tech titan faces a relentless journalist, far from the safety of scripted soundbites? Imagine Elon Musk, sleeves rolled up, squared off against Norah O'Donnell's steely gaze, in a studio so private that every word was recorded but none were aired. Tonight, we peel back the curtain on that forbidden confrontation. Why did Elon's voice catch when Norah dropped the phrase "factory fire investigation"? The question wasn't just about charred steel and broken circuits, it struck at the heart of risk versus responsibility. He paused, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features, as if weighing the cost of progress on human lives. What shadow passed through Norah's eyes when Elon defended rolling out a midnight software update? It wasn't mere coding, it was a dilemma of innovation against safety. Her pen tapped lightly, signaling that she had spotted a crack in his carefully engineered facade. When she pressed him on that leaked board memo warning of unsustainable overtime, why did his posture stiffen? Behind the words lay whispers of exhausted engineers and mounting errors. For a moment, the billionaire's confidence wavered, revealing a man torn between deadlines and well-being. How did Elon's smirk falter when Norah quoted the public outcry over sudden layoffs? The issue was more than numbers, it was about faces and futures. He inhaled sharply, confronted by the stark human side of his bottom line. Why did Norah's pen hover when Elon alluded to his Mars ambitions amid earthly crises? Dreaming big or abandoning immediate needs, where does the balance lie? Her steady gaze dared him to choose between cosmic conquest and compassion at home. And as the red rec light continued its silent pulse, what did the pregnant pause in their dialogue reveal about power and accountability? In that charged space, ambition and ethics collided. Unseen hands hovered over the cut button, deciding that the raw truth might be too volatile for prime time. What you've glimpsed so far is just the spark. Beyond these questions, an unaired clash awaits, where every answer leads to another challenge, and every silence echoes louder than any broadcast ever could. The studio felt colder than Elon Musk had expected. The heavy hush in the room was broken only by the faint hum of equipment and the steady pulse of a single red rec light above the cameras. The feed was recording, yes, but there was no broadcast, no millions of viewers, just two people seated across a polished mahogany table, a journalist and an innovator, both too seasoned to be rattled by lights or lenses. At least that's what they told themselves. Elon adjusted his sleeves, a nervous reflex he thought he'd long outgrown. He could feel the weight of Norah O'Donnell's gaze as she flipped open her notepad. Her expression gave away nothing. No warmth, no hostility, just readiness. The air between them was thick with the unspoken knowledge that this was not going to be the kind of conversation easily contained by a PR team. "Mr. Musk," Norah began, voice measured, firm yet without accusation. "Let's start simple. When the fire broke out at your Fremont factory last month, regulators pointed to electrical faults. Your statement emphasized recovery, resilience, but not once did you mention the root cause. Why?" The question was direct. Elon felt the faintest prick of sweat at his collar, though the room was cool. He chose his words carefully, his voice steady. "Resilience matters. We rebuilt because halting would have sent the wrong message, that we can be derailed, that our mission is fragile. We fix, we move forward." Norah's pen didn't move, her eyes stayed locked on his. Moving forward is admirable, but the employees who described blocked exit routes, failing alarms, smoke-filling corridors, should they have been the cost of that resilience? He leaned forward, folding his hands, as if to draw himself in, to hold himself together. There's always a cost to progress. We mitigate where we can. We improve systems. We push. But halting has costs too. For a moment Norah said nothing. The hum of the equipment seemed louder, as if the room itself were listening. Then softly, "Does pushing faster than safety allows ever feel like victory?" Elon's jaw tightened. "I don't celebrate setbacks. But I won't let them define us. Every great achievement comes with risk. I accept that." She nodded, jotting a single word. Elon tried to glance at the page, but it was too quick. "You've spoken of risk often," Norah said. "Let's talk about autopilot. Last month, the update you approved at 2 a.m. caused braking anomalies. Drivers reported near misses, yet the patch was rushed out overnight. Why?" Elon didn't flinch, but inside he felt the memory stir, the urgent meeting, the data flashing red, the weight of a decision made at speed. Because waiting meant exposing drivers to a known issue longer. The fix wasn't perfect, but better imperfect progress than no action. Norah's pen tapped once, twice. Better imperfect progress until a mistake claims a life. Who carries that responsibility? "I do," he said, voice low but firm. and I'll carry it every time if it means trying to save lives rather than waiting for bureaucracy to catch up." The conversation felt less like an interview and more like a sparring match, one where words were jabs and truths, the punches that landed hardest. Nora leaned back slightly, watching him, studying the weight of his answers. "Then let's shift," she said. "The internal surveys, the burnout reports, the resignations. You've been quoted saying, 'Pessimists work slower.' Do you think that attitude has cost you good people?" For the first time, Elon hesitated. The mask of the confident CEO faltered, just briefly. He remembered faces, brilliant engineers, tired managers, who had left. He saw again the email from the lead systems designer who wrote, "I can't give more than I have." "I think," Elon said quietly, "that I demanded more than some could give. That's a cost I regret." Her eyes softened for a moment. "Regret is human, but does it change how you lead?" "It has to," he said, and in that instant, the vulnerability was real. "We've started reworking schedules, enforcing downtime. I've listened. It's late maybe, but I am listening." Nora let that settle before she moved on. "And yet on the same night you announced hundreds of layoffs, you tweeted about stock gains. How do you justify celebrating market wins amid personal losses?" He bristled, but there was no anger, just weariness. "Because those gains fund the next jobs, the next technologies. There's no joy in layoffs, but there is hope in what they make possible." She wasn't letting go. "Do you ever think the human faces behind those numbers deserve more than hope?" His voice dropped. "I do, and I wish we could keep everyone, but I also wish we could move faster, do more, with fewer losses along the way." Nora scribbled again, filling her notepad with more than just words, moments, impressions, vulnerabilities. "And Mars?" she asked. "When Earth's problems are so immediate, is Mars ambition or escape?" Elon's eyes gleamed, and for the first time, passion overtook calculation. "It's both. It's escape, if we fail here. It's ambition, if we succeed. Mars is the insurance policy. Earth is the prize." The air in the studio grew heavier. Outside, the world moved on, oblivious to this exchange. But inside, the tension was its own orbit, two minds circling the truth, drawing closer with each question, each answer. Nora flipped to a new page. "Your charity work is largely secret. Mental health initiatives, STEM scholarships. You could easily earn goodwill. Why hide it?" "Because impact isn't about credit. It's about outcomes," Elon said. "When they succeed, they don't owe me thanks. They owe themselves congratulations." Her next question came softer. "And how do we verify impact if it's hidden?" "We're working on opening it up," he admitted. "Transparent metrics, public data. No spin, just proof." They were nearing the edge of what even Elon would willingly expose. Nora saw it, but she had one more question, the one that had lingered through every interview, every report. If you could change one decision, one launch, one tweet, one policy, what would it be? He paused, really paused. His fingers traced the grain of the table. His mind's eye saw the faces, the failures, the victories won too dearly. And then the words came. "I'd learned sooner that ambition without empathy isn't enough, that you can't just build for the future, you have to build for the people who live in it." And in that instant the mask dropped fully. The cameras caught it, the feed recorded it, but no one would see it, not outside those walls. When the producer's voice came through the earpiece, it was almost a relief. "Cut, we're done." The red light blinked out, the room exhaled, but the conversation lingered, as real and raw as any rocket launch, any mission plan. Two people, one vision, one purpose, to push humanity forward, and to do so with eyes open to the cost. And somewhere in the silence that followed, the true impact of that unaired half-hour began, not in broadcasts, not in headlines, but in the quiet decisions made afterward, in boardrooms and factories and homes, because real progress, Elon knew now, is measured not in miles or markets, but in lives. The room felt heavier once the red light flicked off, but neither of them moved. Nora kept her pen poised over her notepad, as if the answers still hung between them, demanding to be captured. Elon's gaze dropped for a moment, as though he were staring not at the table but through it, down into the depths of decisions he could not take back. But the silence refused to break. The producer's voice didn't return. No assistants rushed in. The air remained thick, as if even the room itself understood that something had shifted. Nora set down her pen deliberately, the soft click loud in the quiet. She didn't need to say it. They weren't finished. "You know," she said quietly, "off-camera often reveals more than on-air ever could." Elon gave a soft, breathless chuckle. "And the danger is, Off-camera moments stay honest. For the first time, no calculation shaded his expression. The CEO, the futurist, the figurehead, they fell away. What remained was a man carrying more than he let on. Nora's voice softened, but the steel remained. Why did it take exhaustion, walkouts, whistleblowers for you to listen? Elon's shoulders sagged. Because I was listening to the wrong things. Timelines, milestones, investors. I thought if I met the mission, the rest would sort itself out. And now I realize you can build the future and still fail the present. Nora's eyes searched his face. It wasn't the answer she'd expected, but it was the one she'd hoped for. Outside the studio, the world went on as usual. Headlines about market surges, tweets dissecting every word from his last public talk. But inside here, the mask was off, and in this hidden space, the dialogue deepened. Let's talk about that night, Nora pressed. The night you stayed at the factory after the fire, alone. Why? Elon hesitated. His fingers traced the table's edge again, grounding himself. Because I couldn't leave it like that. The damage, the silence after. It felt like abandonment if I walked out. She nodded slowly. But you left a lot of people behind emotionally, didn't you? His breath caught. Yes. And your team. They needed me to see them, not just the work. Nora leaned forward, voice low, intimate. You once tweeted that if people aren't part of the solution, they're part of the problem. Do you see how sometimes the problem was asking people to be the solution while you watched from above? His lips parted in protest, but closed again. That's fair, he said finally. It's more than fair. The producer, listening from the booth, kept silent. No one dared break what was unfolding. Elon exhaled, steadying himself. I don't always know how to balance it. I was raised to believe results are what matter. But what good is a result if the cost is unseen until too late? Nora tilted her head. Then let me ask, do you think you've built a culture of resilience or a culture of fear disguised as ambition? The question hit harder than any before. For a heartbeat, Elon said nothing. His eyes dropped again, not in defeat, but in thought. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. Maybe both, and I don't want that to be my legacy. The words hung in the air like smoke after a burn. Nora broke the silence gently. And if legacy isn't Mars, or Tesla, or Twitter, what is it? His answer came slower this time, more carefully. It's people, how they remember working with me, whether they felt seen or just used. That admission shifted something between them. Nora, always the observer, felt it, the rare moment when a subject wasn't just answering but confessing. Elon looked up. The intensity returned to his gaze, but softer now. You know, Nora, I thought I could outwork regret, outbuild it, but regret isn't something you can leave behind at a launch pad. She smiled, but it wasn't triumphant. It was human. No, it follows you, until you face it. And in that quiet studio they faced it together. The cameras no longer rolled, but something more important was being recorded, in memory, in conscience, in unspoken promises. Elon leaned back at last. So what's your takeaway from all this? Nora considered it. That even visionaries are human. And that maybe, just maybe, the real frontier isn't Mars. It's learning to lead without leaving people behind. He nodded. Then let that be what I work on next. And with that, the conversation drew to a close, not because the tension had gone, but because it had evolved. What began as confrontation ended in understanding. What began as an unaired broadcast became, in that room, a reckoning. Outside, the world would never hear the words they'd exchanged, but for those 30 minutes, the most important audience had been the two people in that room. And the changes that would follow, though unseen at first, would ripple further than any televised soundbite ever could. The silence in the studio turned dense, like a storm waiting to break. Elon's breath came slower now, but beneath that calm surface, a tempest raged. Nora watched him, the slight tension in her jaw betraying the effort it took to hold her next question. The battle of wills was no longer subtle, it was open, raw, and impossible to contain. The cameras might not have been live, but the truth in that room was as loud as thunder. Nora's voice dropped, sharper than before, cutting through the stillness like a blade. Tell me, Elon, when you overruled the safety protocols on that rocket test, what flashed through your mind? Was it innovation or ego? For a fraction of a second, his facade faltered. The memory hit him like a blow, the blaring alarms, the engineer's frantic warnings, the heat on his face as he gave the go-ahead. The roar of the engines, the sickening crack as the rocket failed. I thought we had it under control, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier force. I thought risk was the price. And when the debris fell, Nora pressed, leaning forward, eyes blazing now, unwilling to let him retreat into corporate platitudes. When you saw the wreckage, did you see the future, or your failure? Elon's fingers curled against the table's edge until his knuckles whitened. He could still hear the sirens, see the scorched earth. Both, he admitted, the word bitter on his tongue. I saw both. The tension cracked through the room like lightning. The invisible storm that had been gathering between them finally broke open. Nora wasn't satisfied. She pushed harder. And did you think of the technician who barely escaped the blast radius? The one who wrote later that he'd never trust leadership again? Elon froze, the air seeming to leave the room. He remembered the young man's face, pale, eyes wide, as the shockwave threw him to the ground. The email afterward, filled with disappointment more than anger. I think of him, Elon whispered, more than you know. Nora didn't let up. Her pen trembled in her fingers, not from fear, but from the intensity of the moment. And the families, the ones who watched the news that night, waiting for confirmation that no lives were lost? Do you understand the fear you've left in your wake? Elon's voice, when it came, was ragged. Every day, I carry it every day. A bead of sweat traced a slow path down his temple, unnoticed. The man who had stood before governments, faced down competitors, who had sold the world on the future of humanity, was now cornered by his own truth. Nora's tone shifted, low and relentless. You speak of carrying it, but carrying isn't fixing. What are you doing, Elon, to fix it? The question landed like a hammer. His breath hitched. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped tight as if trying to hold the storm inside. His mind raced, images of new protocols, emergency drills, design overhauls, but none of it felt like enough. I'm trying, he said, voice raw, stripped of defense. I'm trying, but I don't know if I can fix all of it. And that was the moment the room changed. The weight of admission, of fallibility, filled the space more than ambition ever could. Nora's eyes softened, but the steel in her spine remained. Then let's keep trying, she said, voice steady, but no more behind closed doors, no more off the record. People deserve to see the truth, not the curated version. Elon nodded slowly, every barrier he'd built trembling under the weight of that demand. But Nora wasn't done. Her next question came swift, another lightning strike. The night you ordered the code shipped without final review, the night that patch caused a near-fatal crash, what drove that decision? Speed? Pride? Or was it the fear that for once you might fall behind? Elon's head bowed, the memory burning bright in his mind. The endless lines of code, the pressure to deliver, the gnawing dread of failure, all of it, he confessed. All of it drove me. And what did it cost? Nora demanded, not unkindly, but with the force of accountability. His voice cracked. Trust. The word echoed in the studio, louder than the quiet that followed. Nora set her pen down at last, folding her hands on the table. The confrontation had reached its peak, but neither felt victorious. Both were changed by it. The cameras had stopped recording minutes ago, but the truth, undeniable, unedited, had finally been spoken. And it was that truth, not any broadcast, that would leave the deepest mark. But still, the tension lingered. Elon straightened slowly, meeting her gaze with a resolve forged in the fire of their exchange. I won't stop trying to earn it back, he said. And in the quiet that followed, Nora simply nodded, because in that moment, no further words were needed. The reckoning had come, and both knew the work was just beginning. The room's stillness morphed into a palpable charge, the kind that precedes either a storm or an explosion. Elon's fingers finally unclenched, leaving pale imprints on his palms. His throat felt dry, but he resisted the urge to ask for water. That would mean breaking the fragile thread of intensity that connected them now, a thread woven from raw truths and unspoken reckonings. Nora saw it, the crack in the armor, and she wasn't about to let it seal again. Elon, she said, voice steady but carrying the weight of every question unasked, every accountability dodged. Tell me about the night after the layoff memo leaked, the night your employees stayed up messaging each other in panic. What did you feel reading those messages? Or did you read them? His mouth opened, but the words tangled before they could form. The images flooded back, a sea of private messages, forwarded emails, worried voices through the grapevine. He'd seen them, chosen silence over immediate reply, believing clarity would come with the morning. I read them, he admitted, voice low. I read every word, and I felt like I was watching the foundation shake beneath me. But I didn't know how to stop the collapse without making it worse. Elon nodded slowly, every barrier he'd built trembling under the weight of that demand. But Nora wasn't done. Her next question came swift, another lightning strike. The night you ordered the code shipped without final review. The night that patch caused a near-fatal crash. What drove that decision? Speed? Pride? Or was it the fear that for once you might fall behind? Nora's pen moved again, but this time not in judgment, in witness. And what would you say to those people now, if they were sitting here with us? Elon's eyes glistened, just faintly. That I should have spoken then, that I should have answered their fear with truth, not silence, and that I'll spend every day trying to earn back their trust. Nora leaned forward, her voice softening. Then why, when fear rises, do you still choose silence first? The question hit deeper than any before. His breath caught. His mind flashed to every boardroom where silence seemed stronger than admitting uncertainty. Every moment where speed seemed safer than vulnerability. Because I was taught that the world devours weakness, he said, the words tasting bitter, and I thought silence hid mine. Nora's gaze didn't waver, but silence doesn't hide weakness, it magnifies it. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the hum of the dormant cameras. The weight of their words filled the room, pressing against the glass walls, as if even the studio itself were holding its breath. Elon straightened, the storm in his eyes settling into something quieter but no less fierce. Then I'll stop hiding, he said. I can't change the past, but I can change what I do next. And still Nora wasn't finished. Her next question rose like a final test, sharp as a scalpel. When you look in the mirror, when the cameras are off, when no one's watching, do you see a visionary, or a man running from his own shadow? The silence that followed was heavy, but not empty. Elon let the question hang, let it settle inside him, let it sting, and then, with a breath that seemed to carry every regret, every triumph, every sleepless night, he answered, I see both, but I want to see the man who finally stops running. The honesty of it filled the space more than any slogan, any prepared remark ever could. And Nora, who had chased truth across battlefields, through scandals in the halls of power, gave him the only response left, a nod, not of victory, not of defeat, but of recognition. And so they sat, two figures framed in studio lights, the tension between them no longer one of combat, but of shared understanding. The red rec light stayed dark. The producer never gave the order to roll again. But the conversation that unfolded that night would leave deeper scars and deeper hope than any broadcast ever could. Their words, unheard by the world, echoed long after they left that table, and somewhere in the stillness that followed, both knew, real change, like real truth, doesn't happen under the glare of spotlights. It happens here, in the hard, uncomfortable spaces where ambition meets accountability, and where silence finally breaks. The studio air felt as if it had thickened, as though every molecule was charged with the weight of what had just been spoken. Elon sat still, but the storm inside him hadn't settled. It had simply changed form. The mask of certainty he'd worn for so long was gone, replaced by something rawer, something truer. The man who had built rockets and electric cars, who had defied industries and governments, now sat stripped of slogans, facing questions that no amount of innovation could answer with steel and code. Nora broke the silence, her voice quiet but firm, as if knowing that the next words needed to be spoken gently, lest they shatter what was left of the fragile connection between them. There's one more thing, Elon, one question that's haunted this entire conversation. You've said time and again that everything you do is for humanity's future. But whose future do you serve, if those building it feel abandoned along the way? Elon inhaled slowly, his chest rising and falling as he weighed the enormity of the question. His gaze drifted, not to the cameras, not to the lights, but inward, to the memories that clung to him like shadows. The engineer who left after begging for balance, the assembly line worker who collapsed from exhaustion, the coder who resigned in silence after another all-nighter. I thought I was serving everyone's future, he said at last, voice thick, but I see now, I wasn't looking close enough at the present, at the faces right in front of me. Nora nodded, her expression softening, but her eyes remained sharp. And now that you see them, Elon's hands unfolded, palms open on the table, as if in surrender or acceptance, it wasn't clear which. Now I can't look away. The words hung between them, heavy with promise and regret alike. But Nora pressed on, sensing that they stood at the threshold of something more than an interview, more than an off-air exchange. Then what changes, Elon? When you walk out of this room, what happens next? He hesitated, not because he didn't know, but because he knew too well how easily intentions are drowned out by the noise of the world outside. I stop hiding behind the mission, he said, voice steadying. I stop using the future as an excuse to ignore the present. I stop acting like vulnerability is a weakness. And then, unprompted, the confession that no one, not investors, not employees, not even close confidants, had heard before. I'm terrified of failing them. Of failing all of you. That's why I push so hard. That's why I've been blind to the damage. Nora's breath hitched, just for a moment. She'd come prepared for evasion, for PR spin, for the carefully constructed persona. She hadn't expected this. Elon, she began, but the words faltered, because what could be said in the face of such raw truth? But he continued, as though the dam had finally broken. I thought I could outwork it, outbuild it, outthink it, but it's always there, the fear. And the more I tried to outrun it, the more I left people behind. And in that moment, in that unlit studio, the man who had launched rockets beyond the Earth's atmosphere laid bare the heaviest payload he'd ever carried, his own humanity. Nora found her voice again, though softer now, no longer the relentless journalist, but simply one person speaking to another. Maybe that's where the real work begins, Elon. Not out there, she gestured vaguely toward the night sky beyond the studio walls, but here, with the people who help you build it all. He nodded, the motion slow, deliberate. I see that now. For a long moment, they sat in silence, not the strained kind that filled the room earlier, but a silence of understanding, of something unspoken yet shared. Finally, Nora folded her notepad closed, setting it gently on the table. No cameras needed for that answer, she said quietly. Elon offered the faintest smile, the first genuine one since the conversation began. No cameras, he agreed, just the truth. And as the quiet wrapped around them once more, both knew that the most important broadcast wasn't the one that had been silenced by the network. It was this: two people in a room, daring to speak, daring to listen, daring to face what lies beneath the surface of ambition. Outside the studio, the world remained unaware. But inside, in the space where ambition met accountability, where vision met vulnerability, something had shifted. And though no one would see it, no one would hear it, the echoes of that reckoning would linger in decisions, in policies, in lives touched long after the lights went dark. The interview had ended. But the real story had just begun.